So in this video, we are going to design our home page. So you'll remember I'm doing this based off of my mockup that I created, which I'll show you again here really quick to remind you. So we will start off by creating this big Jumbotron section with the headline and description and a background image, which will also go beneath the headers. And then we'll move into this little stripe here with different services, and then here, and so on and so forth. So we're going to go one by one and build this out, and I will try to go as quick as possible so this isn't painfully slow, but I'll also try to be as detailed as possible to make sure you understand what I'm doing. So let's jump right in. To get started with an Elementor page, you want to go to your pages. And then here you'll see a list of your pages. Now it will specify which are already Elementor based. So you'll see this little Elementor tag here, and it will also give you the option to edit with Elementor if it is an Elementor converted page. If not, you can simply go into the page and I'll click contact, for example, and click this edit with Elementor button up here. So we're going to go back though, since I already have this one converted to Elementor, I'm going to click on edit with Elementor. We've been here before. This is the main editing page for Elementor. To get started with this, we're going to want to start dragging our different elements into this dotted box right here, since that's where the page content goes. And for this section, I think what I am going to start with is the text editor, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to drag that in, and that gives me this. So from the mockup, what I am going to I'll try to keep this side by side so you can keep it in mind as I'm going through. So we're going to need this to be pretty tall and our headline to be pretty big with the description. So let's just add the content in here, your headline, and we want that to be the main heading, nice and big. And then we have this placeholder content, which in your case should be real content because it's a real website. This is just placeholder. So we have that in there. We're going to obviously want it centered. Under style, center. The text color will need to be white. So we're going to do that. Boom. Under style, text color change. All right. So we're also going to need to add that background. What we're going to do is select this section and come over to the settings for that section. Go under style. And here's the background section. So we're going to click on classic, and it gives us an option for an image. I'm going to upload my image. All right, so now we have our background in there. We're going to set the position to center because I want that centered in the whole thing. Attachment, you can ignore for now. Repeat, we do not want it to repeat. And the size we want to cover. That means it will take up however much space we want it to in order to fill up this container. So that looks pretty good right now. It looks like my typography settings aren't great when I set them to global, but if I switch this to primary, that looks okay. This font needs to change though, but we'll leave that for now. I might need to come back and change this to two separate blocks so that we can change the fonts in here. But that looks okay for now. In order to get this much taller, what I'm going to do is click on this row, go under settings and advanced, and I am going to increase the padding, which is the amount of space between the content and the container inside of it. So you'll see what I mean in a minute here. I actually want to work with EM because that's just a little bit better for responsive purposes. And if I add 5, you can already see that's a whole lot more space between the content and the container. So that's looking pretty good. What I also want to do is increase the padding on the top. So I'm going to not link these all together so that I can edit the top individually. And I'm going to increase that a bit to 15. 20 is probably good. I want to leave enough space up here that I can fit the header. So now I need to push this full block up so that it comes beneath this header. So for that, I'm going to use the margin, which is the space between the outside content and this content block. So for that, we want to create a negative top margin to push this up. So we are going to put in here, again, EM for better responsiveness, and I'm going to just start going down here until we reach the top, and there we go. So you'll see it hides a lot of our header content. That's okay. We're going to fix that because you can change something called the Z index. Now what that means is, so we have overlapping content here, right? So the Z index is what specifies what content order it should go in. So the lower Z index you set, the lower on the page layers it will be. The higher it is, the more likely you're going to be able to see it here because it's a higher level. So you'll see what I mean here in a minute. So since this text block here is covering up our logo, what we want to do is lower the Z index for this block so that that logo will show up, since that currently is set to a lower one. So we're actually going to just set this to 1 for right now. And what I'll actually need to do is come in and edit the header and change the Z index for that so that it's a higher number so it shows up here. So I'm going to do that really quick, and then I'll pop back in here and show you. So I'm going to click on updates, save my changes. Then I'm going to go into theme builder and go right into the header, and we're going to edit that. And here we are, and I want to make sure that this logo has a high Z index, so I'm going to set 9. Let's see if we can just do it for the overall row. It looks like we can. So just for that row, I'm going to set it to 9 to make sure that will pop up. Now I also, while I'm in here, I'm going to change these links to be white since they're now on a darker background. So we're going to change that to white, and then also hover should probably be, we'll just keep it white for now. Same over here. Style, white, good, hover, white, good, update. And we're going to go back to the dashboard so we can select that home page again and jump into there. All right, perfect. So here we are. One problem you'll notice right away, this is not the white version of our logo. So we're actually going to go back to the dashboard. And remember, we changed the logo by going to Appearance, Customize, and Site Identity. And here's the logo. We're going to change it and select the white one. Select it, and we're going to skip cropping. And boom, it's white. Perfect. Publish, exit, go back to Pages, edit with Elementor. All right, perfect. So you'll notice that matches pretty well. These aren't all caps, but that's pretty minor. We can go back in there and change that later. It looks like I have a little too much space on the top of here. So I'm going to go into this row again and edit it under style, advanced, sorry. And the padding on the top, we're just going to bring down a little bit. So that's looking pretty good there. So like I said, the text in here just isn't quite right. So I'm going to actually just delete this block. And then what I'm going to do is actually drag in just a heading. We're going to make sure it's an H1. It's important that the main heading of your entire page is an H1. For SEO purposes, that will work a lot better. So make sure you stuff your keywords into this. Put your primary keyword in there. So that's looking good. We're also going to want to make sure that's white. Perfect. It's a little small, but we can always change that in our global typography settings. Remember, we did that earlier. I also want to make sure that's centered. So under content, we're going to center that. And then I am also in this section going to just add the text editor right below it. And that gives us more control over this than we had before. So we're going to put in that content again, or at least most of it, and pretty it up a little bit. Looking good. We're going to want to center that as well and make it white. There we go, looking pretty good, and that font looks pretty similar in size and style. So while I'm here, I am going to edit my global typography settings so that this matches a little bit closer in size. So if we come in here and go to Site Settings and Typography, So we did that as an H1 tag. So I am going to click on edit under H1 and make that a bit bigger. Now again, when you see these options here, PX, EM, REM, a lot of times it could be good to go with EM. For responsive purposes, that's a bit better, and to explain that a little bit more. So as you size down, if you have EM, it will do it relative to the browser size. So this heading should shrink basically with the browser size. So stuff like this, it's better to pick EM. If you need it to be a specific size on all devices, it's good to pick PX because that will stay no matter what device you're on. But for our purposes, this is going to be okay. You'll notice as we increase that font size for the header, our block here got pushed down a little bit. So I am going to come back in here and edit the section, go back into advanced and push that margin up a little bit more. Now I'm actually going to give it a little bit of padding here and give myself some room in case I need to do that again. So we're going to edit this one as well, increase that top, and that's looking pretty good. So there we go. That looks pretty spot on from our mockup, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so I want to add this blue strip here, and for that, we have 4 different columns in here. So I'm going to click on plus and select 4. Then I am going to go in to the section settings under style to add that dark background color. So we're going to click on background type classic, select it from my global colors. Perfect. So that's looking great. Now we're going to want to add some padding in here again. It's always good to have that padding between your content and the borders. Give yourself some room to breathe. So under advanced, EM again, we're going to just try 5. 5 is too much. 2 is looking all right. So we're going to do that. Then we have to add in these little images. So I separated these as just separate images. So I'm going to add those in with the title below it. All right, so we're going to click on plus here and drag in an image. And we're going to upload the image. This one needs to be that one. We're going to insert it. There we go. Do the same for these. All right, there we go. We got our little icons in there. Those are looking great. So now we just need a title below them. So we're going to go back into the blocks and we're going to drag this heading in below. And for that one, we're going to want a pretty small one. So we're going to click on H6 and center it and make it white. Now I have bold text here. So I'm going to change that to secondary. Perfect. First one is website design. And there we go. And then we're going to want to do the same thing for the next 3. So I'm just going to jump right in and do that. As you can see, we are matching pretty well. This is a little heavier on the spacing around it, but I don't mind it as much. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is a pretty easy one. This is just a blank text here with a white background. So we're going to click on here, and I'm actually just going to do a single column. Now we do have this dog image on the far left, so that might be a little bit tricky, but we're going to start with the text and go from there. So we're going to add our heading here, drag that in. Now you'll see this is left aligned, but it's centered with a certain width. So let's see how we can do that. So we're in the column settings. If we go, or actually we're in the heading settings. If we go into this row settings, content width box, that's great. So we're going to set our width of the box here, and I think 600 should be pretty good. Now again, we want to add some padding to this box to make it look pretty nice. Going to do an EM, make it better. 5 is probably fine. We'll see how that looks with text. So now we're going to add this text block below it. Go back to blocks, add the text editor below here. Perfect. Copy this in. There we go. That's looking pretty great. For right now, it's fine. We're going to update, save that. So the easiest way to put this in is actually in your mockup. What I would suggest doing is splicing this section as a background image and just leave one big image as almost fully white, just with a little dog on the left. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll come back in here and add that as a background image. All right, so we're going to go into the column settings or row settings here and go to here and select that image after we upload it. All right, so you can see what I mean here. It's mainly one big white image, which is the dog on the left. So we're going to insert that, and there we go. There's the dog on the left side. So I'm going to center this so that it's centered. Now, that made it go away, but if we go into size and click on cover, that looks okay. What we can also do is click on contain, and that will ensure that the whole image is visible within here. So no matter what, you're going to be able to see that dog. So that looks pretty great. We're going to update that and save it. Now you'll see when I went to full screen, we actually have a problem here. I didn't select no repeat. So I'm going to select no repeat on that. But now you'll see, since I centered the full background and put it as a background size of contain, it looks kind of funny because that dog is just half there. So what we can do, since we have it as contain, and that's going to ensure that the whole image is showing, we're going to left align it instead of center. So we're going to say center left, and that'll move that dog to the left, no matter how wide this section is. So that is looking pretty good for that section. I'll kind of expand here so you can kind of see how that dog moves along with the content. So we'll save that, and we are looking pretty good. So the next section we have in our mock-up here is a left align image and a right align text, and that repeats for two different sections. We are going to come in here, select a structure, which would just be 2 by 2 columns side by side. Now this one we're going to want to set a set width for this so it doesn't expand across the whole page. So go into the settings and set maybe 1200-ish would be pretty good. Then we're going to set this image. I'm just going to take a screenshot of this because that's much faster. And of this one. Perfect. So then we are going to add that image over here. Drag it in. Change the image. Upload it. All right, there's our image, and then we just add our content. Now, since this is the same sizing and content as this previous section, I am actually just going to duplicate this to make life a little bit easier. So we're going to duplicate, drag and drop this eventually down there, and we are going to duplicate this. Right click, duplicate, boom. Drag and drop down here, preferably below. There we go. All right, so that's much too long. We're going to shorten that to what I have. There we go. That for some reason is increasing the font size. So it must be retaining the styles, but that's fine. We'll change it to that. Headline 2 goes here, and there we go. So the only thing you'll notice here is this is not vertically centered as it is in our mock-up here. So in order to change that, we're going to click on this column settings and vertical line change to middle. There we go. Perfect. So that is looking similar. Again, only thing, this headline 2 size is a little bit too small. So I'm going to change that right now. We're going to go into typography and H2 and change the size EM to, that looks pretty good. Just slightly smaller than the main font. So there we go. That's what I want. And while I'm in here, I'll change that color as well. Actually, just to secondary. That's probably good. And we're going to update. Exit. And we're back on the home page. Great. So as I said before, we have another one of these, just flips. So easiest thing to do, duplicate. You can also click this icon here to quickly duplicate, and we just want to flip these columns. So drag them across, and there we go. So we're going to change this image out to the other one. Insert that. And that's looking pretty good. Now these actually could use some more padding. So I'm going to click in here to the column settings, style, advanced, sorry, just advanced. Padding, switch to EM. That looks pretty good. So we'll just do an even 5. So down here again, change that, go into advanced, 5 and EM 5. There we go. Since this word is so long, it looks funky. So we're just going to split that up a bit since it's placeholder and doesn't need to make sense. So the next thing we're going to want to do is create this grid section. So this is intended for thumbnails of different work you've done. Since this is kind of a design agency, this was kind of intended as a little portfolio. So I'm going to show you 2 different kind of ways to do this. So you can make this as a slider and just kind of slide these images just in one row, or we can just put 6 specific spots in here and make it not a slider. So let's take a look at both of those options. So to create the slider, we're going to go into our elements panel and search for slider, and you'll see this carousel, which is same as a slider. So we're going to drag that in here, and then our image carousel options will pop up. So first we're going to have to add some images to there, and I'm going to upload the little placeholders that I already imported. I'm going to create a gallery with those and put those in. Make sure you're captioning these just for SEO purposes, but I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. So then there we go. We have our images. They're a bit spaced out though, and it's not looking great. So first what we're going to want to do is increase the size to large since we don't want the thumbnail size. That already is looking much better. We can set how many of these pictures we want to show at one time. In my mockup, I have 6 or 3 in each row, but we could do quite a bit more. We could do 6 at a time and have it look like that. Let's keep it at 3, nice and big. Slides to scroll, that just means when you click the arrow, it will scroll that many of them. We're just going to leave that on default. Image stretch, we're going to do to take up more space and look a little bit nicer. So you can change the navigation here. You can either have arrows and dots, just the dots, arrows, whatever you want. I'm just going to go none for now because I think that is a bit cleaner. Another thing I would like to point out is that you can come into your row settings here by clicking these dots and change this to full width if you want the images to span across the entire screen. That looks kind of nice, especially if you have a lot of them. I think that's a good option if you're going to do a slider. And that's pretty much it. You can change vertical line, middle, all that different stuff. So you can kind of pick and choose in here what settings you kind of want to change. You can also link each of the images either to the media file and bring it up in this nice lightbox style, or you can do a custom link to link it to a specific page if you want. So that's kind of nice. I think what I would like to do though is make this a static thing with grid without the sliders. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what we just spent the time on, and I am just going to put in a 3-column structure. I'm going to keep that boxed, and what I'm going to do is just upload images into each one of these columns. So we're going to put one there, put the first one in there, looks good. We're going to put one here. Second image, put one here. Third image is uploaded. So it looks pretty good. So to get rid of kind of the spacing between these images, you're going to want to go into your row and come into layout, and you can change the columns gap to a no gap, and that will make those images slide up right next to each other just like our mockup was. And then obviously it's just a matter of duplicating this and flipping out the images. So it's pretty easy. We'll swap these out and there we go. So that's our grid. It's looking just like this. Again, if you want, you can change the row settings to be full width. If you want these images to span across the whole thing, make sure you do it for both of them. But I think I like it as a boxed setting so they don't become ginormous. So I think that's looking good. Now I'd like to add a little bit of spacing between this row and this one just to give it some room. So I'm going to go in this row settings, and on the margin I'm going to unlink these, and on the top margin I'm going to add 50 pixels just to give it some breathing room. That looks pretty good. I also am realizing I'm missing a header here, so I'm going to go into the blocks and drag in this heading. Actually, I won't. I am going to add in just a full width section and drag that up to above here, and then add in my heading. And we're going to say our work and change the style of that to match the rest of the page. Primary looks pretty good. We just want to center it. And there we go. That looks great. All right, so next section, we have another one of these heading and description, and then 3 sections. So what I'm going to do is, since it's very similar to this one, is just duplicate that one, drag this one down all the way to below our work. And there we go. And I'm going to remove this background and change it to a color. First, I'm going to have to get rid of this image, which we can click the little garbage icon next to it. And I don't want that. I actually think this is a new color I don't have saved. So we're gonna come in and grab the hexadecimal for that and put it in, and there we go. That's looking good. Let's just change this so it's similar. And that's good. I'm not going to bother with changing this placeholder content because it's just placeholder. So that's okay. Just going to change it up a bit because it kind of annoys me though. Okay, so that's looking good. So now we just need 3 boxes. We're going to add 3 column structure. And again, change the background. So let's grab that hexadecimal again and come in to these row settings, change it to a color. So for these 3 white boxes, what we're going to do is add a new section, and we are going to choose the text editor and drag that in there. That'll give us text, but we need a white background. So we're going to go into the background and click on classic and make it white. Now we're going to need to add some padding to this so that the text isn't butting up right against the edge. So we're going to go into advanced and add some padding. Now again, we're going to do EM for a little bit better responsiveness, and that's looking much better. So then we're going to have to space this down, add a title, logo, design. So we're going to style this closer to how it is on the mockup. So we'll have it bold, maybe set the heading to 5, and we're going to do all caps. All right, so that's looking pretty good. We're going to want to center that as well. And style, alignment, center, perfect. Then we space it down again. We can add in media, and we're going to add in the icons. So this one's going to be just icon number 1. Oh, I put all of them in. That's okay. So that's the icon, and we just need to add a little bit more text on the bottom. So this would be pricing. So that looks pretty good. So I am just going to duplicate this. There we go. And there we go. So let's change this icon to what we have in the second one. There we go. All right, so that looks pretty good. So we've got one more section to do on our homepage, and it would be this little 2 side-by-side thingy on the bottom of our page. So let's go ahead and try to set that up. And to do that, I think I might just try to duplicate this section since it's very boxy, and I think we can save some time by going from there. So we're going to duplicate. I'm going to come into advanced and increase the padding here a little bit. There we go, that's better. And we are going to change the background on this row to be our dark secondary color. Maybe even darker. Do I have a darker one? Yes, I do. Darker secondary. Perfect. Let's see this. So we have that many boxes, so I can get rid of one of these boxes. There we go. And in this left one, I want to make the style advanced background to be transparent. So we're just going to toggle that off. Now I do want to put a border on it of kind of a lighter gray. So a solid border, probably just 1 pixel. And we want that to be just a grayish one. Border radius is fine. If you want round edges, that is your border radius that you would want to change. So I also want white text here. Let's go white there, and we don't want that icon there. It should say about us. So it does have a bit more text in it, so I'll just kind of copy paste this since it's all placeholder anyway. And that looks pretty good. So now this right box, we want the same style. So I'm actually going to duplicate this and drag it into here and delete this old one. And change this to contact us. And then we want a form. So what I actually want to do is put this border on this column because I want to add a form below this, and I can't do that since I put a border around this text block. So I want to remove that border under advanced border and get rid of the border. And so I'll click in here, come into advanced border, and that's none. And then click on the column, go under style, border, solid. And we just want that to be 1 pixel. And there we go, that's better. So then we'll come over here and do the same thing. Border, solid, 1 pixel, no border radius. Does that one have a border radius? Nope. Okay, so looking good. Now these boxes are butted up against each other, so to fix that spacing, we're going to click on the column and add a margin to it. Probably just 1 EM. We'll do it. Do it on both columns. Give them some space. There we go. That looks great. So now I want to add in a form. So if we go back to our blocks, go in here, form, click and drag that in here. We got a nice form in there. So the style is a bit different. You got white backgrounds on the inputs. So what we can do is come in here in the form style and go under field and change the background color to be nothing. And there we go. And we also want the border color nothing. Does that show up? Yes, it does. So let's see in the field. Let's have the text color a bit lighter. Under form, text color lighter. So that looks pretty good as far as a basic form goes. I'm just going to leave that in here for the button. I do want to change that to match my site a bit more, so we'll change that to blue. And that looks pretty good. It's a little different from the mockup, but I think that was great. So let's move forward then and create our footer. Okay, so we have the majority of our homepage done. actually all of the home page, and we just need to add in our little bottom footer here. Now I have a pretty simple one, but with everything I just walked through on creating this home page, I think you can kind of get the idea of how to add in whatever you want. But I will walk you through on how to set up a universal footer in Elementor. So to start, we are going to go in here in the Elementor page and click on the menu, and we're going to go back to Theme Builder, and we'll click on the footer, and we will click on Add New. Now again, just like the nav bar, it gives us some pre-made ones that we can select from and start with. And since mine is super basic, I'm just going to start from scratch. So I'm going to X out of that, and if we come down, this is where we can add our footer content. So I'm going to create a structure, one column. We're going to click on the row settings and give it a background, classic color, and make that darker secondary. And I'm going to darken it a little bit so that it's different from the rest. Then we are going to just want to add some text in there. So we're going to go into our blocks, click on the text editor, put that in there, and copy paste in this text. There we go. That's odd. Didn't copy over everything. There we go. We're going to center that under style, center. All right, so that looks pretty good for our footer. So that's really all I had in here. Now again, obviously you can add in as many blocks in here and columns, whatever you can imagine can go in there. So I definitely recommend prettying that up. But for our purposes, I'm going to publish that, and we're going to include it in our entire site. And save and close. And let's check out our site. So that's just taking me to the footer page, but if we click on the logo here, we can see the full site. So we have our nice nav bar up here, Jumbotron, all the icons with services, and the rest of our homepage content explaining more about our business. Now, I think this is great. This turned out really great, and as you guys can see, it was super easy to set up.